Question 1. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new network automation solution using Python scripts and APIs offers significant operational efficiencies. However, the development team is under pressure to deploy quickly. Which approach to risk assessment best balances the benefits of automation with the need for security and compliance? Option A. Proceed with deployment based on the assumption that no immediate threats are apparent and that the cost savings outweigh the potential for future, unspecified risks. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that includes threat modeling, vulnerability analysis, and impact assessment, integrating findings into the development and deployment plan, and establishing continuous monitoring processes. Option C. Defer the detailed risk assessment until after the automation solution has been fully deployed and is operational, focusing solely on functional testing during the initial development phase. Option D. Perform a cursory review of the code for obvious syntax errors, assuming that any significant security or compliance issues will be identified and addressed after the solution is live. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that includes threat modeling, vulnerability analysis, and impact assessment, integrating findings into the development and deployment plan, and establishing continuous monitoring processes. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in network programmability development, balancing the perceived benefits of a new automation solution against the potential risks and the cost of thorough risk assessment. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts, which, if not managed, can result in significant security vulnerabilities, operational disruptions, and non-compliance with regulatory frameworks. The professional challenge lies in advocating for and implementing a robust risk assessment process, even when faced with time constraints or perceived immediate cost savings. This requires strong communication skills, a deep understanding of potential impacts, and the ability to articulate the long-term value of proactive risk management. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a structured and comprehensive risk assessment that integrates security and compliance considerations from the outset. This aligns with best practices in secure software development and network operation, which are increasingly governed by regulatory frameworks requiring due diligence in managing technological risks. By identifying potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their impact on business operations and data confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the team can proactively implement mitigation strategies. This approach ensures that the automation solution is not only functional but also secure and compliant, thereby protecting the organization from potential financial penalties, reputational damage, and operational downtime. This proactive stance is a cornerstone of responsible technology deployment and aligns with the principles of risk management mandated by various industry standards and regulations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with deployment based solely on the perceived cost savings and the absence of immediate, obvious threats. This fails to acknowledge the dynamic nature of cyber threats and the potential for unforeseen vulnerabilities introduced by new code. Ethically, this approach breaches the duty of care to protect organizational assets and data. From a regulatory perspective, it can lead to non-compliance with data protection laws and industry-specific security mandates that require a proactive risk management posture. Another incorrect approach is to conduct a superficial risk assessment that only considers the most apparent technical risks, neglecting broader operational, legal, and compliance implications. This approach is flawed because it creates a false sense of security. It fails to identify risks related to data privacy, regulatory reporting, or the impact of automation failures on critical business processes. This oversight can result in significant regulatory fines and legal liabilities, as many frameworks require a holistic view of risk. A third incorrect approach is to defer comprehensive risk assessment to a later stage, after the solution is in production. This is a highly risky strategy that prioritizes speed over safety. It significantly increases the likelihood of undetected vulnerabilities being exploited, leading to breaches or failures that are far more costly to remediate than proactive assessment. This approach demonstrates a disregard for established risk management principles and can be seen as a failure to uphold professional responsibilities, potentially violating ethical codes and regulatory expectations for due diligence. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes a phased approach to risk assessment, integrating it into the development lifecycle. This involves 1. Threat modeling, identifying potential threats and attack vectors relevant to the network programmability solution. 2. Vulnerability analysis, assessing the code and infrastructure for weaknesses that could be exploited. 3. Impact assessment, determining the potential business and operational consequences of identified risks. 4. Mitigation planning, developing and implementing controls to reduce identified risks to an acceptable level. 5. Continuous monitoring, establishing processes for ongoing risk identification and management post-deployment. This systematic approach ensures that risks are managed effectively throughout the solution's lifecycle, aligning with regulatory requirements and ethical obligations to protect organizational assets and stakeholders. Question 2. To address the challenge of ensuring that newly developed network automation scripts and programmability solutions adhere to established security policies and regulatory compliance mandates, which of the following approaches best integrates risk assessment into the development lifecycle? Option A. Implement the programmability solution first, and then initiate a security audit to identify and fix any security or compliance deviations discovered during the audit. Option B. Prioritize rapid deployment of the programmability solution to gain immediate operational benefits and address any identified security or compliance issues reactively as they arise. Option C. Assign the entire responsibility for risk assessment and compliance validation to a separate security operations team, with minimal involvement from the development team during the initial design and coding phases. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment of the proposed programmability solution, identifying potential threats, vulnerabilities, and compliance gaps, and integrate remediation strategies into the development plan before deployment. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment of the proposed programmability solution, identifying potential threats, vulnerabilities, and compliance gaps, and integrate remediation strategies into the development plan before deployment. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in network programmability, balancing the need for rapid deployment of new network functionalities with the imperative to maintain a secure and compliant operational environment. The introduction of automation and programmability, while offering significant benefits, also introduces new attack vectors and potential misconfigurations that could lead to regulatory noncompliance. The professional challenge lies in proactively identifying and mitigating these risks before they manifest as security incidents or compliance breaches. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the pursuit of innovation does not compromise established security and regulatory standards. The correct approach, which involves a structured risk assessment process integrated into the development lifecycle, represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of proactive risk management and due diligence. This approach ensures that potential vulnerabilities and compliance gaps are identified early, allowing for remediation before code is deployed to production. This proactive stance is crucial for adhering to regulatory frameworks that mandate security by design and ongoing risk management. By systematically evaluating the potential impact of programmability on security controls and compliance requirements, organizations can build robust and trustworthy automated network solutions. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the speed of deployment, without a commensurate focus on security and compliance assessment, would be professionally unacceptable. This failure would directly contravene regulatory requirements that often stipulate risk assessments and security testing before the implementation of new technologies or significant changes to network infrastructure. Such an approach could lead to the introduction of vulnerabilities that expose sensitive data, disrupt services, or violate data privacy regulations, resulting in significant financial penalties and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, which relies on ad hoc, reactive security measures after deployment, is also professionally unsound. This reactive posture is inherently less effective and more costly than a proactive one. It fails to meet the spirit, and often the letter, of regulations that require organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to manage risks. Relying on post-deployment incident response alone does not demonstrate a commitment to preventing breaches or ensuring continuous compliance. A third incorrect approach, which delegates risk assessment entirely to a separate security team without involving the development team in the process, creates a disconnect and can lead to misinterpretations or incomplete assessments. While collaboration with security experts is vital, the development team must understand and integrate security and compliance considerations into their design and implementation. This siloed approach can result in solutions that are technically secure, but impractical to implement or maintain from a compliance perspective, or vice versa. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a phased approach to risk assessment integrated into the network programmability development lifecycle. This includes 1. Threat modeling, identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities introduced by the code or automation. 2. Impact analysis, determining the potential business and regulatory consequences of these threats. 3. Control identification, defining and implementing appropriate security controls and compliance checks. 4. Testing and validation, rigorously testing the implemented controls and the overall solution against identified risks and compliance requirements. 5. Continuous monitoring, establishing mechanisms for ongoing monitoring and reassessment of risks as the network and threat landscape evolve. This iterative process ensures that security and compliance are not afterthoughts, but integral components of the development process. Question 3. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive understanding of potential security exposures introduced by adopting network programmability. Which of the following approaches best aligns with a proactive and compliant risk management strategy for developing and deploying these solutions? Option A. Prioritize security investments based on the perceived complexity of the programmability solution, rather than on a formal evaluation of potential business impact and likelihood of occurrence. Option B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify, analyze, and prioritize potential threats and vulnerabilities specific to the network programmability implementation, and then develop targeted mitigation strategies. Option C. Focus security efforts exclusively on addressing known and documented attack patterns, assuming that novel threats are unlikely to impact the new programmability infrastructure. Option D. Implement a broad set of security controls based on general industry best practices without a specific analysis of the programmability solution's unique risks. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify, analyze, and prioritize potential threats and vulnerabilities specific to the network programmability implementation, and then develop targeted mitigation strategies. Explanation: scenario analysis. Developing and deploying network programmability solutions introduces new attack vectors and expands the potential attack surface. Organizations must proactively identify, assess, and mitigate these risks to maintain the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of their network infrastructure. The challenge lies in balancing the benefits of automation and agility with the inherent security risks, especially when dealing with evolving threat landscapes and the complexity of software-defined networks. A thorough risk assessment is crucial for informed decision-making regarding resource allocation, security controls, and operational procedures. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive risk assessment process. This begins with identifying all potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the network programmability implementation, such as insecure API endpoints, unpatched automation scripts, or unauthorized access to network controllers. Next, the likelihood of these threats materializing and the potential impact on the business are evaluated. Based on this assessment, appropriate mitigation strategies are developed and prioritized. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that security measures are proportionate to the identified risks and that resources are allocated effectively. It also supports compliance with general cybersecurity principles and frameworks that mandate risk-based security approaches, ensuring that the organization takes reasonable steps to protect its assets. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing security controls without a prior risk assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It leads to misallocation of resources, potentially overinvesting in controls for low-risk areas while neglecting critical vulnerabilities. This reactive approach is inefficient and ineffective, failing to provide a structured basis for security decisions. It can also lead to non-compliance with regulations that require a documented risk management process. Focusing solely on known threats without considering emerging or novel attack vectors is another failure. The landscape of network programmability is dynamic, and new vulnerabilities are constantly discovered. A static threat model will quickly become obsolete, leaving the network exposed to unforeseen risks. This approach lacks foresight and adaptability, which are essential for robust security. Ignoring the potential impact of a security incident on business operations and reputation is a critical oversight. A risk assessment must consider the business context to prioritize mitigation efforts effectively. Failing to do so can result in inadequate protection for critical business functions, leading to severe financial and reputational damage if an incident occurs. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and responsibility towards stakeholders. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive and iterative risk management framework. This involves establishing clear processes for identifying, analyzing, evaluating, treating, and monitoring risks. When considering network programmability, this means integrating security considerations from the design phase through deployment and ongoing operations. A risk register should be maintained and regularly reviewed, with mitigation plans tied to specific risks. Decision-making should be data-driven, informed by the risk assessment findings, and aligned with organizational security policies and relevant industry best practices. Continuous learning and adaptation to the evolving threat landscape are paramount. Question 4. Quality control measures reveal that a newly developed Python script designed to automate firewall rule updates has introduced potential vulnerabilities that could allow unauthorized access to sensitive network segments. The development team is pushing for immediate deployment to address a critical business requirement. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation while adhering to robust security and operational best practices? Option A. Immediately deploy the script and rely on existing intrusion detection systems to flag any suspicious activity, with a plan to patch the script if issues arise. Option B. Halt the deployment, conduct a thorough security risk assessment of the script, including code review and simulated attack scenarios, and implement necessary security hardening before re-evaluating deployment. Option C. Assume the existing network security infrastructure is robust enough to mitigate any risks introduced by the script, and proceed with deployment as planned. Option D. Deploy the script with a temporary, less restrictive set of rules and plan to refine them once the business requirement is met and security concerns are less pressing. Correct answer is A. Immediately deploy the script and rely on existing intrusion detection systems to flag any suspicious activity, with a plan to patch the script if issues arise. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in network programmability development, ensuring the security posture of automated network changes. When quality control flags potential vulnerabilities introduced by new scripts, it highlights the inherent tension between rapid deployment and robust security. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for agility and automation with the imperative to protect the network from unauthorized access, data breaches, or service disruptions. This requires a proactive and systematic approach to risk assessment, rather than a reactive one. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that integrates security considerations throughout the development lifecycle. This means identifying potential threats, vulnerabilities, and the impact of those vulnerabilities on the network and its data. It necessitates defining security requirements for network automation scripts, implementing security testing, such as static and dynamic analysis of code, and penetration testing of the automated changes, and establishing clear rollback procedures. This aligns with best practices in secure software development and network operation, aiming to prevent security incidents before they occur. From a regulatory perspective, this proactive stance helps demonstrate due diligence in protecting sensitive network infrastructure and data, which is often a requirement under various data protection and cybersecurity regulations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to solely rely on post-deployment monitoring to detect security issues. While monitoring is crucial, it is a reactive measure. Waiting for an incident to occur before addressing a vulnerability is a failure of due diligence and can lead to significant security breaches, reputational damage, and potential regulatory penalties for negligence. This approach fails to proactively mitigate risks. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of deployment over security validation. This often involves bypassing or inadequately performing security reviews and testing to meet aggressive timelines. This is a direct contravention of security best practices and can be interpreted as a willful disregard for security, increasing the likelihood of successful attacks and subsequent regulatory scrutiny. A third incorrect approach is to assume that existing network security controls are sufficient to protect against vulnerabilities introduced by new automation scripts. Network programmability can introduce new attack vectors or bypass existing security mechanisms if not properly considered. Relying on outdated assumptions about security without assessing the specific risks posed by the new code is a critical oversight and a failure to adapt security measures to evolving threats. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a security by design and shift-left approach to network programmability. This involves integrating security considerations from the initial design phase through development, testing, and deployment. A structured risk assessment framework should be applied to all automation initiatives. This framework should include threat modeling, vulnerability analysis, impact assessment, and the definition of appropriate security controls and testing methodologies. Regular security training for development and operations teams, coupled with a culture that prioritizes security, is essential. When issues are identified, a systematic process for remediation, including thorough testing of fixes and clear communication, should be followed. Question 5. Process analysis reveals that a network engineering team is eager to implement Cisco network programmability solutions to automate routine tasks and improve network agility. However, concerns have been raised regarding the potential security implications and operational stability of introducing these new tools. Which of the following approaches best addresses the inherent risks associated with this initiative? Option A. Rely on the vendor's security certifications and documentation to ensure the programmability tools are secure and stable, proceeding with deployment immediately to capitalize on efficiency gains. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential security and operational threats, evaluates their likelihood and impact, and defines specific mitigation strategies and rollback plans before deployment. Option C. Prioritize the implementation of programmability features that offer the most immediate operational benefits, deferring detailed risk analysis and mitigation planning until after the initial deployment phase. Option D. Perform a high-level review of potential risks, focusing only on common network vulnerabilities, and assume that any unforeseen issues can be addressed reactively after deployment. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential security and operational threats, evaluates their likelihood and impact, and defines specific mitigation strategies and rollback plans before deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in network programmability, balancing the introduction of new automation tools with the inherent risks of security vulnerabilities and operational disruptions. The professional challenge lies in conducting a thorough risk assessment that is not merely a perfunctory exercise, but a robust process that informs decision-making. This requires understanding the potential impact of automation on the existing security posture and operational stability, and then developing appropriate mitigation strategies. The pressure to adopt new technologies quickly can sometimes lead to shortcuts in risk assessment, making careful judgment and a structured approach paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic identification of potential risks associated with the new network programmability tools, followed by an evaluation of their likelihood and impact. This includes considering security risks such as unauthorized access, data breaches, and denial of service attacks, as well as operational risks like configuration errors, service outages, and performance degradation. Crucially, this approach mandates the development of specific mitigation strategies, such as enhanced access controls, rigorous testing protocols, and rollback plans, before deployment. This aligns with best professional practices and regulatory expectations for due diligence and responsible technology adoption, ensuring that the benefits of programmability are realized without compromising security or stability. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with the deployment of network programmability tools without a formal risk assessment, relying solely on the vendor's assurances of security and stability. This represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence, potentially violating compliance requirements that mandate risk management for new technologies. Ethically, it exposes the organization and its users to unnecessary risks. Another incorrect approach is to conduct a superficial risk assessment that only identifies obvious threats, but fails to delve into the specific vulnerabilities introduced by the programmability interfaces or the potential cascading effects of automation errors. This approach is professionally unacceptable as it provides an incomplete picture of the risk landscape, leading to inadequate mitigation strategies. It can result in non-compliance with regulations that require comprehensive risk analysis and can lead to unforeseen security incidents or operational failures. A third incorrect approach is to focus exclusively on the technical risks of the programmability tools while neglecting the human element and potential for insider threats or misuse. This is a flawed risk assessment because it fails to consider the entire threat surface. It can lead to a false sense of security and leave critical vulnerabilities unaddressed, potentially violating security standards and best practices. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured risk management framework, such as ISO 31000 or NIST SB 800-30, as a guide. The decision-making process should involve 1. Clearly defining the scope of the risk assessment, including the specific programmability tools and their intended use. 2. Systematically identifying all potential threats and vulnerabilities. 3. Analyzing the likelihood and impact of identified risks. 4. Evaluating and prioritizing risks. 5. Developing and implementing appropriate mitigation strategies. And 6. Continuously monitoring and reviewing risks. This iterative process ensures that risk management is an ongoing activity, not a one-time event, and that decisions are informed by a comprehensive understanding of potential consequences. Question 6. Consider a scenario where a network programmability team is developing an automated system to provision network devices in a financial institution. The system will handle sensitive customer data and configurations. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance and security during the development and deployment of this automation? Option A. Rely solely on the existing security controls of the network infrastructure, assuming that the automation will not introduce any new security risks beyond what is already managed. Option B. Proceed directly with development based on the team's understanding of best practices, assuming that the automation will inherently be secure and compliant due to the expertise of the developers. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment involving security, compliance, and business stakeholders to identify potential vulnerabilities and compliance gaps before development begins, and then iteratively test and validate the automation against these identified risks throughout the development lifecycle. Option D. Implement the automation as quickly as possible to realize efficiency gains, with a plan to address any security or compliance issues that may arise after deployment. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment involving security, compliance, and business stakeholders to identify potential vulnerabilities and compliance gaps before development begins, and then iteratively test and validate the automation against these identified risks throughout the development lifecycle. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the network programmability team is tasked with implementing automation that directly impacts sensitive financial data processing. The challenge lies in balancing the efficiency gains of automation with the stringent security and compliance requirements inherent in financial services. A failure to adequately assess risks could lead to data breaches, regulatory penalties, and significant reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the automation does not introduce vulnerabilities or bypass existing controls. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive risk assessment before implementation. This aligns with general principles of secure software development and IT governance, which mandate proactive identification and mitigation of potential threats. In the context of financial services, this proactive stance is often reinforced by regulatory expectations that demand robust risk management frameworks. By systematically evaluating potential impacts on data integrity, confidentiality, and availability, and by involving relevant stakeholders, the team ensures that the automation is developed and deployed in a manner that is both effective and compliant. This approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to responsible innovation. An incorrect approach that bypasses a formal risk assessment and proceeds directly to implementation is professionally unacceptable. This failure constitutes a significant ethical lapse and a potential regulatory violation. It demonstrates a disregard for established security protocols and a lack of due diligence. Such an approach increases the likelihood of introducing unforeseen vulnerabilities, which could lead to unauthorized access, data corruption, or service disruptions. In a regulated industry like finance, this negligence could result in severe penalties, including fines and sanctions, and could severely damage the organization's credibility. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on the development team's perceived expertise without independent validation or stakeholder consultation is also professionally unsound. While the development team may possess technical skills, they may not have a complete understanding of all business implications or regulatory nuances. This siloed approach can lead to blind spots in the risk assessment, potentially overlooking critical compliance requirements or business process dependencies. It fails to leverage the collective knowledge of the organization and increases the risk of implementing a solution that, while technically functional, is not operationally sound or compliant. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured, multi-stage approach. First, clearly define the scope and objectives of the network programmability initiative. Second, conduct a thorough risk assessment that identifies potential threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts, considering both technical and business perspectives. This assessment should involve cross-functional teams, including security, compliance, and business operations. Third, develop mitigation strategies for identified risks, prioritizing those with the highest potential impact. Fourth, implement the automation in a phased manner, with rigorous testing and validation at each stage. Finally, establish ongoing monitoring and review processes to ensure continued security and compliance. This systematic approach ensures that risks are managed proactively and that the implemented solutions are robust, secure, and aligned with organizational and regulatory requirements. Question 7. The investigation demonstrates that a team developing network automation scripts using Python for Cisco devices has encountered a critical security vulnerability in a third-party library they are heavily reliant upon. The team is under pressure to deploy new network features rapidly. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices for developing with Cisco network programmability in a regulated environment? Option A. Proceed with the deployment of the automation scripts using the vulnerable library and rely on network intrusion detection systems to flag any malicious activity originating from the exploited vulnerability. Option B. Immediately patch the vulnerability in the third-party library. Thoroughly test the modified library and the automation scripts in a staging environment, and then deploy the updated scripts and library. Option C. Develop a workaround within the automation scripts to mitigate the vulnerability without updating the library, and deploy the scripts as soon as possible. Option D. Temporarily disable the network features that rely on the vulnerable library until a new, secure library is available, and inform stakeholders about the delay and the reasons for it. The correct answer is B. Immediately patch the vulnerability in the third-party library, thoroughly test the modified library and the automation scripts in a staging environment, and then deploy the updated scripts and library. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network programmability, balancing the need for rapid development and deployment with robust security and compliance. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that automated network configurations, while efficient, do not inadvertently introduce vulnerabilities or violate established security policies and regulatory requirements. Careful judgment is required to select development practices that are both effective and secure. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a security-first mindset throughout the development lifecycle. By integrating security testing and validation early and continuously, it ensures that any code or configuration changes are scrutinized for potential risks before deployment. This aligns with the principle of shift-left security, which is a cornerstone of modern secure development practices, and is implicitly supported by regulatory frameworks that mandate due diligence in protecting network infrastructure and data. Adhering to established coding standards and peer review processes further enhances code quality and reduces the likelihood of introducing errors that could have security implications. An incorrect approach that bypasses security reviews for the sake of speed is professionally unacceptable. This directly violates the ethical obligation to protect network integrity and data confidentiality. Such an approach creates significant regulatory and ethical failures by increasing the risk of security breaches, which could lead to non-compliance with data protection regulations e.g. GDPR if applicable, though we are strictly adhering to the exam's jurisdiction, which implies a focus on U.S. frameworks for this example. It demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and a failure to implement reasonable security measures, potentially exposing the organization to legal penalties and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on post-deployment monitoring for security issues is also professionally deficient. While monitoring is crucial, it is a reactive measure. Relying on it exclusively means that vulnerabilities may exist and be exploited for a period before detection, which is a failure to proactively mitigate risks. This reactive stance can lead to regulatory noncompliance if it results in a breach that could have been prevented through proactive security measures. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a risk-based approach. Before embarking on development, a thorough understanding of the potential security implications of the proposed programmability solutions must be established. This includes identifying relevant security policies, compliance requirements, and potential threat vectors. Development should then proceed with security integrated at every stage, from design and coding to testing and deployment. Regular audits, code reviews, and continuous security testing are essential components of this process. Professionals should always err on the side of caution when security is concerned, prioritizing robust security practices over expediency. Question 8. Upon reviewing a new network automation script designed to provision quality of service (QoS) policies across multiple Cisco routers, which approach best aligns with the principles of secure and compliant network development, considering the need for both efficiency and adherence to established network security best practices. Option A. Modify the script to bypass certain security checks to expedite the provisioning process, with the intention of re-enabling them once the initial deployment is complete. Option B. Implement the script immediately after a basic functional test, assuming that the existing network infrastructure's security posture will mitigate any potential policy misconfigurations introduced by the script. Option C. Develop and deploy the script after rigorous testing that includes automated validation against predefined security benchmarks and a review of its impact on existing access control lists and firewall rules, ensuring it aligns with Cisco's recommended development guidelines for network automation. Option D. Deploy the script with minimal testing, focusing solely on its ability to apply QoS policies, and plan to address any security or compliance issues that arise during post-deployment monitoring. The correct answer is B. Implement the script immediately after a basic functional test, assuming that the existing network infrastructure's security posture will mitigate any potential policy misconfigurations introduced by the script. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network programmability, balancing the need for rapid development and deployment with robust security and compliance. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that automation scripts, while efficient, do not inadvertently introduce vulnerabilities or violate established network policies, which could have significant operational and regulatory consequences. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that prioritizes security and compliance without unduly hindering innovation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it embeds security and compliance checks directly into the development lifecycle. This proactive stance, often referred to as shift-left security, ensures that potential issues are identified and remediated early, minimizing the risk of costly post-deployment fixes or breaches. Adhering to established Cisco development guidelines and internal security policies is paramount. These guidelines are designed to promote secure coding practices, prevent common vulnerabilities, and ensure that network devices are configured in a compliant manner. By integrating these checks, the development process aligns with the principles of secure software development and responsible network management, which are implicitly expected within the Cisco ecosystem and by regulatory bodies overseeing network infrastructure. An incorrect approach that bypasses or inadequately tests security controls is professionally unacceptable. Such an approach risks introducing vulnerabilities that could be exploited, leading to data breaches, service disruptions, or unauthorized access. This directly contravenes the ethical obligation to maintain the integrity and security of network infrastructure. Furthermore, it could violate regulatory frameworks that mandate specific security measures and auditing capabilities for network devices and the data they handle. For instance, if the network handles sensitive data, failing to implement proper access controls or encryption through automation could lead to noncompliance with data protection regulations. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thorough validation of compliance with network access control lists, ACL, and firewall rules is equally problematic. This oversight can result in unintended network segmentation bypasses or the exposure of services that should be restricted. Such a failure to adhere to established network security policies can lead to security incidents and potential violations of network security standards, which are often subject to audit and compliance requirements. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment. Developers should first understand the security and compliance requirements relevant to the network segment and the data being managed. They should then evaluate different automation strategies against these requirements, prioritizing approaches that incorporate automated security testing, code reviews against established secure coding standards, and validation against network policy configurations is crucial. When in doubt, consulting with network security and compliance teams before deployment is a critical step in ensuring that automation efforts are both effective and responsible. Question 9. The performance metrics show a significant increase in packet loss and latency across several critical network segments immediately following a series of automated code deployments to the network infrastructure. What is the most professional and effective approach to diagnose and resolve this issue? Option A. Immediately initiate a full rollback of all code deployments that occurred within the last 24 hours to restore previous performance levels. Option B. Execute a network-wide unscheduled configuration reset to revert all devices to a known stable state. Option C. Focus all immediate troubleshooting efforts on diagnosing potential hardware failures within the affected network segments, as these are often the underlying cause of performance issues. Option D. Systematically review the logs and configuration changes associated with the most recent code deployments, correlating them with the observed performance degradation, and prepare for a targeted rollback or hotfix if a direct causal link is identified. The correct answer is D. Systematically review the logs and configuration changes associated with the most recent code deployments, correlating them with the observed performance degradation, and prepare for a targeted rollback or hotfix if a direct causal link is identified. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network programmability, balancing the desire for rapid deployment and feature iteration with the imperative to maintain system stability and security. The professional challenge lies in interpreting performance metrics to identify the root cause of degradation without introducing further instability or violating operational best practices. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between transient anomalies and systemic issues that necessitate a change in development or deployment strategy. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven investigation. By correlating performance degradation with recent code deployments, it directly addresses the most probable cause without making assumptions. This methodical approach aligns with industry best practices for incident response and change management, which emphasize minimizing impact and ensuring traceability. In the context of network programmability, this means understanding how code changes can directly influence network behavior and proactively identifying potential regressions. This approach also implicitly supports principles of continuous integration and continuous delivery, CI/CD, by providing feedback on the impact of code changes, allowing for rapid rollback or remediation if necessary. An incorrect approach that immediately reverts all recent changes without investigation is professionally unacceptable. This is because it bypasses the critical step of root cause analysis. Such a reactive measure can mask underlying issues, leading to their recurrence. It also disrupts ongoing development and deployment pipelines, potentially delaying critical updates or fixes. Ethically, it fails to uphold the responsibility of maintaining a stable and performant network. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on hardware diagnostics, is also professionally flawed. While hardware can fail, the correlation with recent code deployments strongly suggests a software or configuration issue. Diverting resources to hardware troubleshooting without first exhausting software-related investigations is inefficient and can lead to misdiagnosis. This approach fails to acknowledge the interconnectedness of software and network infrastructure in a programmable environment. A further incorrect approach, which involves a broad, unscheduled network-wide configuration reset, is highly risky and professionally irresponsible. This action is akin to a shotgun approach, attempting to fix an unknown problem with a drastic, potentially disruptive solution. It lacks precision, could inadvertently break other functional aspects of the network, and would severely impact service availability. This violates the principle of least privilege and controlled change, essential for maintaining operational integrity. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured incident response framework. This typically includes identification of the issue, containment of the impact, eradication of the root cause, and recovery of services. In network programmability, this framework must be augmented with an understanding of the software development lifecycle and its integration with network operations. When performance metrics indicate a problem, the first step should always be to gather data and correlate it with recent changes. If a correlation with code deployments is found, the next logical step is to investigate those specific changes. This involves reviewing logs, analyzing code commits, and potentially performing targeted testing or rollback of specific modules rather than wholesale system changes. This data-driven, iterative approach ensures that solutions are precise, minimize disruption, and contribute to a more robust and reliable programmable network. Question 10. Examination of the data shows that a team is developing a Python script to automate the configuration of new firewall rules across multiple network devices. The script is designed to improve deployment speed and reduce manual errors. The team is considering several approaches for its implementation. Which approach best aligns with industry best practices for network automation and security? Option A. Implement the script in a dedicated staging environment that mirrors production, followed by a phased rollout to production with continuous monitoring and a documented rollback plan. Option B. Deploy the script directly to the production environment after a single successful test run on a development machine. Option C. Utilize the script as is from an online repository without performing any internal validation or testing, assuming the source is reputable. Option D. Develop the script and deploy it to production, but postpone the creation of any formal documentation or rollback procedures until after the initial deployment is complete. Correct answer is B. Deploy the script directly to the production environment after a single successful test run on a development machine. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network programmability, ensuring that automated solutions adhere to established best practices for security and operational integrity. The professional challenge lies in balancing the efficiency gains offered by automation with the inherent risks of introducing new vulnerabilities or misconfigurations. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that not only achieves the desired automation, but also maintains compliance with security policies and operational standards. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a staged, controlled rollout of network automation. This involves thorough testing in a non-production environment, followed by a phased deployment with robust monitoring and rollback capabilities. This methodology aligns with the principles of risk management and operational resilience, ensuring that potential issues are identified and mitigated before impacting the live network. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this approach demonstrates due diligence in protecting network services and data, minimizing the likelihood of service disruptions or security breaches that could have significant business and reputational consequences. An incorrect approach that bypasses rigorous testing and deploys directly to production without adequate validation is professionally unacceptable. This failure constitutes a significant ethical lapse, as it disregards the responsibility to maintain network stability and security. Such an action could lead to widespread service outages, data compromise, and potential violations of service-level agreements, SLAs, or data protection regulations, depending on the jurisdiction's specific compliance requirements. Another incorrect approach, which involves implementing automation without clear documentation or a defined rollback strategy, also falls short of professional standards. This lack of preparedness increases the risk of prolonged downtime and complex troubleshooting if issues arise, demonstrating a lack of foresight and accountability. Ethically, it fails to uphold the commitment to reliable service delivery. Finally, an approach that relies solely on vendor-provided scripts without independent verification or adaptation to the specific network environment is also problematic. While vendors aim for quality, their solutions may not account for unique network configurations or security policies. Deploying such scripts without due diligence can introduce unforeseen vulnerabilities or operational conflicts, representing a failure to exercise professional judgment and a potential breach of security best practices. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic evaluation of automation proposals. This includes defining clear objectives, assessing potential risks, designing a comprehensive testing plan, establishing monitoring and alerting mechanisms, and developing a detailed rollback procedure. Collaboration with security and operations teams is crucial throughout the process to ensure all aspects of network integrity are considered. Question 11. Performance analysis shows that a new network automation script designed to reconfigure firewall rules has a high success rate in lab testing. What is the most professional and responsible approach to deploying this script into the production network to ensure security and operational integrity? Option A. Deploy the script to production, but only after verifying that it performs the intended configuration changes without errors in the lab. Option B. Deploy the script to a staging environment that closely mimics production, but skip extensive monitoring as the lab tests were conclusive. Option C. Deploy the script to a small segment of the production network first, closely monitoring its impact and behavior before a wider rollout. Option D. Immediately deploy the script across the entire production network to leverage its efficiency gains as quickly as possible. The correct answer is C. Deploy the script to a small segment of the production network first, closely monitoring its impact and behavior before a wider rollout. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in network programmability development, ensuring that automation scripts adhere to established operational best practices and security policies. The challenge lies in balancing the efficiency gains of automation with the imperative to maintain network stability, security, and compliance. Developers must not only understand how to write functional code, but also how to integrate it responsibly into a production environment. This requires a deep understanding of the network's existing architecture, security posture, and the potential impact of automated changes. The risk of introducing unintended consequences, such as security vulnerabilities or service disruptions, is significant if automation is not rigorously tested and validated against established standards. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased, controlled rollout of automation, beginning with thorough validation in a non-production environment that mirrors the production setup as closely as possible. This includes unit testing, integration testing, and security scanning of the automation scripts themselves. Subsequently, the automation is deployed to a limited subset of the production environment for further monitoring and validation before a full rollout. This iterative process aligns with best practices for change management and risk mitigation in IT operations. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this approach demonstrates due diligence in preventing harm to the network and its users. It ensures that potential issues are identified and resolved before they impact live services, thereby upholding the responsibility to maintain a secure and reliable network infrastructure. This aligns with general principles of responsible technology deployment, which prioritize safety and stability. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately deploying automation scripts directly into the production environment without prior validation. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it bypasses essential risk assessment and mitigation steps. It demonstrates a disregard for the potential for unintended consequences, such as introducing security vulnerabilities or causing network outages, which could lead to breaches of service-level agreements or even regulatory noncompliance if critical services are affected. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the functional correctness of the script without considering its integration into the broader network security and operational policies. This overlooks the fact that a script might perform its intended task, but do so in a way that violates security protocols or operational procedures. This failure to consider the holistic impact of automation can lead to security gaps or operational inefficiencies, which are ethically problematic as they compromise the integrity and security of the network. A third incorrect approach involves developing automation without any form of version control or rollback strategy. This makes it extremely difficult to revert to a known good state if the automation introduces problems. This lack of preparedness for failure is professionally irresponsible and can lead to prolonged service disruptions, impacting users and potentially violating compliance requirements related to service availability. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to network programmability. This involves 1. Understanding the requirements and potential impact of the automation. 2. Developing and testing automation in isolated, representative environments. 3. Implementing robust change management processes, including peer review and approval. 4. Deploying automation incrementally with thorough monitoring and validation at each stage. 5. Establishing clear rollback procedures and disaster recovery plans. 6. Continuously reviewing and refining automation based on performance and security feedback. This systematic process ensures that the benefits of network programmability are realized while minimizing risks and upholding professional responsibilities. Question 12. What factors determine the most appropriate method for handling sensitive data and authentication when developing automated network configuration scripts using Cisco network programmability tools? Option A. The availability of pre-written code snippets online that can be directly copied and pasted into the script. Option B. The inherent security risks associated with the data and authentication mechanism, the regulatory compliance requirements for data handling, and the principle of least privilege for access control. Option C. The speed at which the script can be deployed and the ease of implementation for the developer, regardless of security implications. Option D. The personal preference of the lead network engineer for a particular scripting language or tool. The correct answer is B. The inherent security risks associated with the data and authentication mechanism, the regulatory compliance requirements for data handling, and the principle of least privilege for access control. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network programmability, balancing the immediate need for a functional solution with the long-term implications of design choices, particularly concerning security and compliance. The professional challenge lies in selecting an approach that not only meets the technical requirements, but also adheres to the stringent security and data handling regulations relevant to the Cisco 600-502 exams implied jurisdiction, which, for the purpose of this exercise, we will assume aligns with general best practices for network programmability development, focusing on principles applicable across common regulatory environments without specifying a single country's laws, as the exam itself is technology-focused rather than jurisdiction-specific. The need for rapid deployment often tempts developers to take shortcuts, but this can lead to significant security vulnerabilities and non-compliance issues, which are critical in any professional setting. The correct approach emphasizes a secure-by-design methodology. This involves proactively identifying potential security risks and incorporating mitigation strategies from the outset. For instance, using authenticated and encrypted communication channels for API calls, validating all input data to prevent injection attacks, and adhering to the principle of least privilege when granting access to network resources are fundamental. This aligns with the professional responsibility to protect sensitive network data and ensure the integrity of network operations. Such practices are universally recognized as best professional practice in software development and network management, forming the bedrock of secure and reliable systems. Incorrect approaches fail to adequately address these critical aspects. An approach that prioritizes speed over security, for example, by using unencrypted communication or neglecting input validation, creates significant vulnerabilities. This could lead to unauthorized access, data breaches, and service disruptions, all of which carry severe regulatory and ethical consequences, including potential fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach might involve hard-coding sensitive credentials or API keys directly into scripts. This is a critical security flaw that violates best practices for credential management and exposes the network to unauthorized access if the code is compromised. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence in protecting system security. A third incorrect approach could be the failure to document the security considerations and assumptions made during development, which hinders future audits, troubleshooting, and the ability of other team members to understand and maintain the code securely. This lack of transparency and accountability is professionally unsound. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that integrates security and compliance considerations into every stage of the development lifecycle. This involves threat modeling, risk assessment, and adherence to established secure coding guidelines. When faced with competing priorities, such as speed versus security, the framework should mandate a thorough risk-benefit analysis, where the potential impact of security vulnerabilities is weighed against the perceived benefits of a faster deployment. The decision should always err on the side of caution, ensuring that security and compliance are not treated as afterthoughts, but as integral components of the development process. Question 13. Analysis of a network automation engineer developing a Python script to configure Cisco routers. The script requires SSH credentials, username and password, to establish a connection and push configuration changes. The engineer is concerned about securely managing these credentials to prevent unauthorized access and ensure compliance with security best practices. Which of the following approaches best addresses this implementation challenge? Option A. Store the SSH username and password in a separate plain text configuration file that is stored in the same directory as the Python script. Option B. Embed the SSH username and password within the network device's configuration itself to be read by the script during its execution. Option C. Utilize a dedicated secrets management tool, such as HashiCorp Vault or Cisco Key Management, to store the credentials and have the Python script retrieve them securely at runtime. Option D. Store the SSH username and password directly within the Python script as plain text variables. Correct answer is D. Store the SSH username and password directly within the Python script as plain text variables. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in network programmability, ensuring secure and efficient credential management when interacting with network devices. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for programmatic access with the imperative to protect sensitive authentication information from unauthorized disclosure or misuse. This requires a deep understanding of security best practices and the specific capabilities of the chosen programmability tools and protocols. The correct approach involves utilizing a secrets management solution that integrates with the automation framework. This represents best professional practice because it adheres to the principle of least privilege and minimizes the exposure of credentials by storing secrets centrally and securely and allowing the automation scripts to retrieve them on demand through authenticated channels. The risk of hard-coding credentials directly into scripts or configuration files is eliminated. This aligns with industry security standards and best practices for secure software development and operational technology management, which emphasize the separation of code from sensitive data. Regulatory frameworks, while not explicitly detailed in the exam syllabus for this specific question's jurisdiction, generally mandate robust security controls for sensitive data, including authentication credentials. An incorrect approach would be to hard-code the credentials directly within the Python script. This is a significant security failure, as it directly embeds sensitive information into the codebase. If the script is compromised, shared, or accidentally exposed, the credentials would be immediately accessible to attackers, leading to potential unauthorized access to network devices. This violates fundamental security principles and would likely contravene general data protection and security regulations that require safeguarding sensitive information. Another incorrect approach is to store credentials in a plain text configuration file alongside the script, even if that file is not directly part of the script. While this might seem like a minor improvement over hard-coding, it still presents a substantial risk. Plain text files are easily readable and can be exfiltrated if the system hosting the script is breached. This approach fails to implement adequate security controls for sensitive data, making it vulnerable to unauthorized access and disclosure, and thus professionally unacceptable from a security and compliance standpoint. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a threat modeling exercise to identify potential vulnerabilities in the credential management process. This should be followed by an evaluation of available tools and techniques, prioritizing solutions that offer robust security features, such as encryption, access control, and auditing. The decision should be guided by the principle of minimizing the attack surface and ensuring that sensitive information is handled with the highest degree of care, aligning with both technical best practices and any applicable regulatory or compliance requirements. Question 14. Market research demonstrates that organizations are increasingly leveraging network programmability to automate the collection and analysis of network telemetry for performance monitoring and troubleshooting. However, this automation can inadvertently expose sensitive customer data if not handled with extreme care. When developing automation scripts that gather network telemetry, which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with data privacy regulations regarding the handling of personally identifiable information, PI? Option A. Delay the implementation of data masking until after the data has been stored in a central repository. Option B. Implement robust data masking and anonymization techniques directly within the automation scripts that collect and process network telemetry. Option C. Assume that all network telemetry is inherently non-sensitive and therefore does not require specific PII handling protocols. Option D. Rely solely on external network security controls, such as firewalls and access control lists, to protect the collected telemetry data. The correct answer is B. Implement robust data masking and anonymization techniques directly within the automation scripts that collect and process network telemetry. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in network programmability, ensuring secure and compliant data handling when automating network operations. The professional challenge lies in balancing the efficiency gains of automation with the stringent requirements of data privacy regulations, specifically those pertaining to the handling of personally identifiable information, PI, within network telemetry. Failure to adhere to these regulations can result in significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The need for careful judgment arises from the potential for automation scripts to inadvertently expose sensitive data if not designed and implemented with security and compliance as primary considerations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing robust data masking and anonymization techniques directly within the automation scripts that collect and process network telemetry. This aligns with the principle of privacy by design, a core tenet of data protection regulations. By masking or anonymizing PII at the source of data collection or during initial processing, the risk of unauthorized disclosure is minimized throughout the data lifecycle. This proactive measure ensures that sensitive data is never exposed in an unencrypted or unmasked state, thereby meeting regulatory obligations for data minimization and purpose limitation. It represents best professional practice because it embeds compliance into the automated workflow, reducing the reliance on post-collection remediation and demonstrating a commitment to protecting user data. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves relying solely on external security controls, such as firewalls or access control lists, to protect the collected telemetry data. While these controls are important for network security, they do not address the inherent risk of PII being present within the data itself. If a breach occurs or if an authorized user accesses the data inappropriately, the PII would still be exposed. This fails to meet the regulatory requirement of minimizing data exposure and can be seen as a compliance gap. Another incorrect approach is to assume that all network telemetry is inherently non-sensitive and therefore does not require specific PII handling protocols. This assumption is dangerous and can lead to accidental data breaches. Regulations often define PII broadly, and network data, such as IP addresses or user session information, can be considered PII under certain contexts. Failing to identify and protect such data constitutes a direct violation of data privacy principles and regulatory mandates. A third incorrect approach is to delay the implementation of data masking until after the data has been stored in a central repository. This creates a window of vulnerability where unmasked PII exists in transit and potentially in the repository before being processed. Regulations emphasize minimizing the time sensitive data is exposed and accessible. This delayed approach increases the attack surface and the likelihood of a compliance failure. Professional reasoning. Professionals developing network automation solutions must adopt a risk-based approach to data handling. This involves identifying potential sources of PII within network telemetry, understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to that data, and implementing controls that are commensurate with the identified risks. The decision-making process should prioritize privacy by design and security by design principles, integrating data protection measures directly into the automation logic. When faced with uncertainty about data sensitivity or regulatory requirements, it is best practice to err on the side of caution and implement stronger protective measures. Regular audits and reviews of automation scripts and data handling processes are also crucial to ensure ongoing compliance, and to adapt to evolving threats and regulations. Question 15. Process analysis reveals that a network engineering team is developing Python scripts to automate the configuration of access control lists, ACL, across a large enterprise network. The team is under pressure to deploy these changes rapidly to address a recent security vulnerability. What is the most professionally responsible and risk-averse approach to implementing these automation scripts in the production environment? Option A. Implement the scripts on a few production devices to gauge their immediate effect without prior staging or version control to expedite the fix. Option B. Develop the scripts, test them thoroughly in a dedicated staging environment that mirrors production, implement version control, and then perform a phased rollout to production, starting with a small subset of devices. Option C. Write the scripts and immediately push them to all production devices, assuming the code is correct and the impact will be uniform. Option D. Deploy the scripts directly to production devices after a quick syntax check, prioritizing speed to address the vulnerability. Correct answer is D. Deploy the scripts directly to production devices after a quick syntax check, prioritizing speed to address the vulnerability. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in network programmability, ensuring that automated network changes, driven by code, adhere to established operational policies and security best practices. The challenge lies in the potential for rapid, widespread impact of code errors or misconfigurations. A poorly designed automation script could inadvertently create security vulnerabilities, disrupt critical services, or violate compliance mandates. The need for rigorous validation and controlled deployment is paramount to mitigate these risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased, controlled deployment strategy. This involves thorough testing in a non-production environment that closely mirrors the production network. The use of version control for all automation scripts is crucial for tracking changes, enabling rollbacks, and facilitating collaboration. Implementing a review process, where peers or subject matter experts examine the code before deployment, adds a critical layer of quality assurance. Finally, a gradual rollout to production, starting with a small subset of devices or a less critical segment of the network, allows for real-world validation and minimizes the blast radius of any unforeseen issues. This approach aligns with best practices for change management and risk mitigation in IT operations, ensuring that automation enhances, rather than compromises, network stability and security. Incorrect approach is analysis. Deploying automation scripts directly into production without prior testing in a staging environment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It violates principles of due diligence and responsible system administration. Such an approach increases the likelihood of introducing errors that could lead to service outages, data breaches, or non-compliance with security policies, potentially incurring penalties or reputational damage. Implementing automation without any form of version control or change tracking is also professionally unacceptable. This practice makes it extremely difficult to identify the source of problems if they arise, to revert to a known good state, or to understand the evolution of the network configuration. This lack of traceability hinders incident response and auditability, which are often regulatory requirements. Skipping peer review or any form of code validation before deployment bypasses a fundamental quality control mechanism. It assumes the developer's code is infallible, which is rarely the case. This can lead to the introduction of subtle bugs or security flaws that might not be apparent until they cause a critical failure in the production environment. Professional reasoning. Professionals developing and deploying network automation must adopt a risk-aware mindset. The decision-making process should prioritize safety, stability, and compliance. This involves a structured approach to development and deployment. 1. Understand requirements. Clearly define the intended outcome of the automation and any associated constraints, e.g., security policies, performance SLAs. 2. Design and develop. Create automation scripts with modularity, error handling, and idempotency in mind. 3. Test rigorously. Utilize dedicated testing environments that accurately reflect production conditions. 4. Validate and review. Implement peer reviews and automated checks to catch errors and ensure adherence to standards. 5. Controlled deployment. Employ phased rollouts, starting with non-critical areas, and have rollback plans in place. 6. Monitor and iterate. Continuously monitor the impact of automation and refine scripts based on performance and feedback. Question 16. Research into the secure management of sensitive network credentials within automated provisioning workflows, a common implementation challenge in network programmability, requires careful consideration of regulatory compliance and data protection. Given the potential for exposure of critical information like device passwords and API keys, what is the most professionally responsible and compliant approach to handling these credentials? Option A. Require manual entry of sensitive credentials by an authorized administrator for each automated task that necessitates their use. Option B. Store all sensitive network credentials in plain text within the automation scripts themselves for easy accessibility during execution. Option C. Implement robust encryption for sensitive data in transit and at rest, enforce strict access controls on credential stores, and maintain detailed audit logs of all credential access and usage. Option D. Utilize a single, unencrypted database accessible by all automation tools to house all network device credentials and configuration secrets. Correct answer is C. Implement robust encryption for sensitive data in transit and at rest, enforce strict access controls on credential stores, and maintain detailed audit logs of all credential access and usage. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in network programmability, ensuring secure and compliant data handling when interacting with network devices. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for automation and efficiency with the stringent requirements of data privacy and security regulations. Mismanagement of sensitive network data, such as user credentials or configuration details, can lead to severe security breaches, regulatory fines, and reputational damage. The complexity arises from the distributed nature of network devices and the potential for data to be exposed during transit or at rest within scripts and automation tools. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that minimizes risk while still achieving the desired automation goals. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing robust encryption for sensitive data both in transit and at rest, coupled with strict access controls and auditing. This aligns with the principles of data protection and security mandated by regulatory frameworks that govern data handling and network security. Specifically, it addresses the need to prevent unauthorized access and disclosure of sensitive information by encrypting credentials stored in configuration files or passed through APIs, and by ensuring that only authorized personnel and processes can access these resources. The approach minimizes the attack surface and adheres to the least privilege principle. Regular auditing provides a mechanism for detecting and responding to potential security incidents, further reinforcing compliance. This represents best professional practice because it proactively mitigates risks associated with sensitive data in an automated environment, demonstrating due diligence and a commitment to security and regulatory adherence. Incorrect approaches analysis. Storing sensitive network credentials in plain text within automation scripts or configuration files is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This directly violates data protection principle, as it exposes highly sensitive information to unauthorized access if the script or file is compromised. Such an approach would likely contravene regulations requiring data confidentiality and integrity. Using a centralized, unencrypted database to store network device credentials and operational data presents a single point of failure and a massive security risk. If this database is breached, all sensitive network information would be compromised, leading to widespread security incidents and potential violations of data breach notification laws. This demonstrates a failure to implement adequate security measures for sensitive data. Implementing automation scripts that require manual input of credentials for every execution, while seemingly secure at the moment of input, is inefficient and prone to human error. It also creates a risk of credentials being inadvertently logged or exposed during the manual entry process. Furthermore, it undermines the core benefit of automation, which is to reduce manual intervention and increase efficiency, and can lead to inconsistent security practices if manual entry is not performed uniformly. This approach fails to provide a scalable and secure solution for credential management in an automated environment. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to network programmability implementation. This involves identifying sensitive data, understanding the regulatory landscape governing that data, and then selecting tools and techniques that provide the highest level of security and compliance. A framework for decision-making should include 1. Data classification. Categorize data based on sensitivity and regulatory requirements. 2. Threat modeling. Identify potential threats and vulnerabilities related to data handling in the automation workflow. 3. Control selection. Choose security controls, e.g., encryption, access control, auditing, that effectively mitigate identified risks. 4. Continuous monitoring and improvement. Regularly review and update security measures to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory changes. This systematic process ensures that automation efforts are not only efficient but also secure and compliant. Question 17. The risk matrix shows a moderate to high likelihood of unauthorized access and potential data exfiltration if new automation scripts are deployed without adequate security vetting. A network engineer has developed a Python script to automate device configuration backups. What is the most professionally responsible approach to deploying this script into the production network? Option A. Implement the script in a staging environment that mirrors production, conduct thorough security vulnerability scans and functional testing, and obtain formal approval from the security and operations teams before a phased rollout to production. Option B. Deploy the script to a small subset of production devices, and if no issues are observed within 24 hours, proceed with a full production deployment. Option C. Deploy the script directly to production, monitoring for immediate anomalies, as speed is critical for timely backups. Option D. Share the script with a few trusted colleagues for informal review, and proceed with deployment based on their feedback. The correct answer is C. Deploy the script directly to production, monitoring for immediate anomalies, as speed is critical for timely backups. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in network programmability, ensuring the secure and compliant deployment of automation scripts. The challenge lies in balancing the efficiency gains of automation with the inherent risks of introducing new code into a production environment. Specifically, the risk matrix highlights potential vulnerabilities related to unauthorized access and data exfiltration, which are critical concerns for any organization operating within a regulated industry. The need for robust security controls and adherence to established operational procedures is paramount to mitigate these risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased rollout with rigorous testing and validation in a controlled environment before production deployment. This aligns with best practices in software development and network operations, often mandated by internal security policies and industry regulations that require due diligence in deploying new technologies. By isolating changes, conducting thorough security reviews, and obtaining explicit approvals, organizations demonstrate a commitment to risk management and operational integrity. This methodical approach minimizes the likelihood of introducing security flaws or operational disruptions, thereby protecting sensitive data and maintaining service availability, which are core tenets of regulatory compliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. Deploying the script directly to production without prior testing or review is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses essential security checkpoints and increases the risk of unauthorized access or data breaches, directly violating principles of data protection and system security. This approach demonstrates a disregard for established change management processes and risk mitigation strategies, which are often legally mandated. Implementing the script with minimal security checks, such as skipping vulnerability scanning, also constitutes a failure. It exposes the network to potential exploits that could be leveraged for unauthorized access or data theft, contravening security standards and potentially violating data privacy regulations. This shortcut undermines the integrity of the security posture. Relying solely on anecdotal evidence or peer recommendation without formal validation and approval is another ethically and regulatorily unsound practice. It lacks the objective evidence required to justify a change in a production environment and fails to demonstrate due diligence in assessing and mitigating risks. This can lead to the introduction of vulnerabilities that may have been overlooked, resulting in non-compliance with security mandates. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach network programmability implementation by first understanding the specific regulatory landscape governing their operations. This includes identifying requirements related to data security, access control, and change management. A structured risk assessment process should then be employed to identify potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the proposed automation. Following this, a phased implementation strategy, including development, testing in a sandbox or lab environment, and a pilot deployment in a controlled production segment is crucial. Each phase should involve comprehensive security reviews, vulnerability assessments, and performance testing. Formal change control procedures, including documentation and approval from relevant stakeholders, e.g., security, operations, compliance teams, are essential before any production deployment. This systematic approach ensures that automation initiatives are not only efficient but also secure, compliant, and operationally sound. Question 18. System analysis indicates that a network engineering team is tasked with deploying a new security policy across a large, multi-vendor enterprise network using a centralized network automation platform. The policy requires significant configuration changes on firewalls, routers, and switches. The team is under pressure to complete the deployment rapidly to address a newly identified vulnerability. What is the most professionally responsible and secure approach to implement this policy change? Option A. Develop a comprehensive automation script, test it thoroughly in a lab environment, implement it in a phased rollout starting with a small segment of the network, and conduct post-deployment verification checks. Option B. Manually configure each network device with the new security policy to ensure individual device integrity and avoid potential automation errors. Option C. Deploy the new security policy to all network devices directly from the automation platform without any pre-deployment testing or validation, relying on the platform's inherent error correction capabilities. Option D. Immediately deploy the new security policy to all network devices simultaneously using the automation platform after a quick manual review of the configuration script. The correct answer is D. Immediately deploy the new security policy to all network devices simultaneously using the automation platform after a quick manual review of the configuration script. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in network programmability, ensuring the secure and reliable deployment of configuration changes across a diverse network infrastructure. The challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid, automated updates with the critical requirement of maintaining network integrity and adhering to security policies. The use of a centralized automation platform introduces a single point of potential failure and a significant security risk if not properly managed. Furthermore, the integration of different network device vendors and operating systems adds complexity, requiring robust error handling and validation mechanisms. The professional challenge is to design and implement a solution that is both efficient and secure, minimizing the risk of misconfigurations or unauthorized access. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a multi-layered security and validation strategy. This involves implementing robust authentication and authorization mechanisms for the automation platform and its users, ensuring only authorized personnel can initiate or approve changes. The use of version control for configuration scripts and templates is crucial for tracking changes, enabling rollbacks, and facilitating audits. Implementing a staged rollout process, starting with a small subset of devices and progressively expanding, allows for early detection of issues and minimizes the blast radius of any potential misconfiguration. Comprehensive pre-change validation checks, such as syntax validation and impact analysis, are essential to prevent common errors. Post-change verification, including automated health checks and monitoring, confirms the successful application of the configuration and the continued stability of the network. This approach aligns with best practices for secure and reliable network automation, minimizing risk and ensuring compliance with operational standards. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that bypasses staged rollouts and direct deployment to all devices without thorough pre-validation is professionally unacceptable. This represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure by disregarding the principle of least privilege and due diligence in network operations. It increases the likelihood of widespread network disruption and security breaches, potentially violating service-level agreements and data privacy regulations. An approach that relies solely on manual review of configuration changes without automated validation or version control is also professionally deficient. This introduces human error, is inefficient for large-scale deployments, and lacks the auditability required by many compliance frameworks. It fails to leverage the benefits of network programmability for efficiency and accuracy, and can lead to inconsistencies and security vulnerabilities. An approach that neglects to implement proper access controls and authentication for the automation platform itself is a severe security and ethical lapse. This exposes the network to unauthorized access and malicious manipulation, potentially leading to data breaches, service outages, and significant financial and reputational damage. It directly contravenes fundamental security principles and regulatory requirements for protecting critical infrastructure. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with network automation, assessing their impact, and implementing controls to mitigate them. A structured approach to planning, testing, and deploying automated changes is paramount. This includes defining clear operational procedures, establishing robust change management processes, and continuously monitoring and evaluating the effectiveness of automation solutions. Prioritizing security, reliability, and auditability ensures that network programmability is used responsibly and ethically, meeting both business objectives and regulatory obligations. Question 19. Which approach would be most appropriate when developing a network analytics solution that processes telemetry data containing potentially sensitive user information, aiming to balance operational insights with data privacy compliance? Option A. Implement a robust anonymization or pseudonymization process for all telemetry data before it is ingested into the analytics platform, ensuring that no personally identifiable information is retained. Option B. Develop a custom filtering mechanism to identify and remove specific types of sensitive data based on manual review and predefined rules, allowing other data to be processed as is. Option C. Ingest all raw telemetry data directly into the analytics platform and rely on access controls to protect sensitive information, assuming that the benefits of comprehensive data outweigh privacy risks. Option D. Process the telemetry data in its raw form and only anonymize it if a specific regulatory audit or incident necessitates it, treating anonymization as a reactive measure. The correct answer is A. Implement a robust anonymization or pseudonymization process for all telemetry data before it is ingested into the analytics platform, ensuring that no personally identifiable information is retained. Explanation. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in network programmability, where the pursuit of efficiency clashes with data privacy and security regulations. The challenge lies in balancing the desire to automate network operations and gain deeper insights from network telemetry with the legal and ethical obligations to protect sensitive user data. The Cisco 600-502 exam focuses on developing with Cisco network programmability, which inherently involves handling network data. Therefore, understanding the regulatory landscape governing data handling is paramount. The correct approach prioritizes compliance with data privacy laws by anonymizing or pseudonymizing sensitive information before it is ingested into the analytics platform. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, which are cornerstones of regulations like GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, or similar frameworks that might be implicitly or explicitly relevant to the exam's context, focusing on data protection. By anonymizing data, the organization mitigates the risk of unauthorized access to personally identifiable information, PI, while still enabling valuable network performance analysis. This proactive measure demonstrates a commitment to ethical data stewardship and regulatory adherence, safeguarding both the organization and its users from potential breaches and legal repercussions. An incorrect approach that involves ingesting raw, anonymized network telemetry into the analytics platform is ethically and regulatorily unsound. This directly violates data privacy principles by exposing sensitive user data without adequate safeguards. Such an action could lead to severe legal penalties, reputational damage, and a loss of trust from users. Another incorrect approach, which involves selectively anonymizing data based on the perceived sensitivity of the information, is also problematic. This approach introduces subjectivity and a higher risk of oversight, as determining what constitutes sensitive information can be ambiguous and prone to error. Without a robust, systematic process for anonymization, critical data might be inadvertently exposed. Furthermore, relying on manual or ad hoc anonymization processes is inefficient and increases the likelihood of noncompliance. Professionals facing such dilemmas should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying all relevant legal and regulatory requirements pertaining to data privacy and security. This should be followed by an assessment of the potential risks associated with different data handling approaches. The chosen solution must demonstrably mitigate these risks while achieving the desired operational or analytical objectives. Consulting with legal counsel or data privacy officers is a crucial step when uncertainty exists regarding compliance. Ultimately, the decision should always err on the side of caution, prioritizing the protection of sensitive data and adherence to established regulations. Question 20. The review process indicates that a new network automation script designed to provision customer services is nearing completion. During the testing phase, the development team proposes using a dataset derived from actual customer configurations, which has undergone a basic anonymization process to ensure the script's accuracy in a production-like environment. The team believes this will provide the most realistic testing scenario. Option A. Generate a comprehensive set of synthetic data that accurately reflects the characteristics and complexity of real customer data, and use this for testing. Option B. Utilize a small, representative subset of the actual production data without any anonymization, arguing that the limited scope minimizes risk. Option C. Proceed with testing using the partially anonymized production data, as the team believes the anonymization is sufficient to protect customer privacy. Option D. Develop and test the script using only theoretical scenarios and code reviews, without any data-driven testing. The correct answer is A. Generate a comprehensive set of synthetic data that accurately reflects the characteristics and complexity of real customer data, and use this for testing. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents an ethical dilemma common in network programmability development, specifically concerning data privacy and security. The challenge lies in balancing the need for comprehensive testing and debugging with the obligation to protect sensitive customer data. Developers might be tempted to use real, albeit anonymized, data for testing to ensure the highest fidelity of their automation scripts. However, even anonymized data can potentially be re-identified or contain residual sensitive information, posing a significant risk. The professional challenge is to find a testing methodology that is both effective and compliant with data protection principles and regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves generating synthetic data that accurately mimics the structure, format, and statistical properties of real production data without containing any actual sensitive information. This method ensures that the network programmability scripts are tested thoroughly against realistic scenarios, validating their functionality and robustness. It directly addresses the ethical and regulatory imperative to protect customer privacy by eliminating the risk of data exposure. This aligns with best practices in secure software development and data governance, which prioritize data minimization and the use of non-sensitive data for testing whenever possible. Incorrect approaches analysis. Using anonymized production data, even with the intent of protecting privacy, is ethically and regulatorily problematic. While anonymization aims to remove direct identifiers, sophisticated techniques can sometimes re-identify individuals, especially when combined with other datasets. This approach fails to uphold the absolute priority of data protection and could lead to breaches of privacy regulations. Using a subset of production data without any anonymization or sanitization is a severe ethical and regulatory failure. This directly exposes sensitive customer information, violating privacy laws and trust. It represents gross negligence in data handling and security. Developing scripts without any testing against realistic data, relying solely on theoretical validation, is professionally suboptimal. While it avoids data privacy risks, it significantly increases the likelihood of production errors and service disruptions once the scripts are deployed. This approach prioritizes avoiding one risk, data exposure, at the expense of another, operational stability and reliability, and implicitly, customer experience. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to data handling in development. When dealing with sensitive data, the default should always be to avoid its use in non-production environments. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying potential risks associated with data usage, e.g., privacy breaches, regulatory noncompliance. 2. Evaluating the necessity of using production data for testing. 3. exploring and prioritizing alternative testing methods that mitigate identified risks, e.g., synthetic data generation. 4. Documenting the chosen testing strategy and its justification. This systematic approach ensures that ethical obligations and regulatory requirements are met while maintaining the quality and effectiveness of network automation.